everyone. My name is Rachel, and I am a part of the Visitor Operations team here at the MAC. I'm the one who has been reading and processing the stories and photos about the 1980 eruption of Mount St. Helens that you have submitted through our online portal. I wanted to note a few interesting themes I have noticed while reading the stories and viewing the photos that have been submitted so far. Many people have noted the rush for masks, remaining indoors, and a general fear and apprehension of the unknown. Most people didn't know what effect the ash would have on breathing. This is something that sounds familiar. We may not be rushing to Sears for masks, but we are rushing to Costco for toilet paper. We are concerned for the older generations and their lungs. We may be facing extensive business closures now, but our cities were also shut down for days because of the ash. There are several parallels between the COVID-19 pandemic and the eruption of Mount St. Helens 40 years ago. Candy Johnson couldn't attend her doctor's appointment in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, because the whole city was shut down, and quote, "It looked like a bomb had been dropped." When the Spokane Indians couldn't return to town because of the ash, their games had to be moved to out of state. The types of stories that resonate from the Mount St. Helens eruption memories are similar to those that we encourage you to write down about the current COVID-19 pandemic. Journal. Put into writing the details that you don't think are important. Keep items that will help document the ways our region is grappling with these unprecedented times. You never know what object or memory will be significant in the future. We have precedent on our side. The Pacific Northwest and the people who live here are resilient. Now you will hear from our History Curator, who wanted to share some of her thoughts on why recording these memories are important for the preservation of history.
Hi, I'm Freya Liggett. I'm the Curator of History at the Northwest Museum of Arts and Culture and the curator of the current exhibition, Critical Memory, Mount St. Helens 40 Years Later. The Critical Memory exhibition explores the general events of the 1980 eruption through the living memories and 40-year perspectives on a generational event in the Pacific Northwest. The exhibition defines the term critical memory as the process in which living memories, those held by living people, as they pass into history. So for folks who are in their mid to late 40s and older, the 1980 eruption of Mount St. Helens was one of these defining generational events. They're events that precipitate change or in some way impact our lives enough to help shape our worldviews. And in turn, they provide the framework for what defines the boundaries between generations. So in the same way that the Great Depression and World War II shaped those known as the Greatest Generation, or the moon landing, JFK assassination, and the Vietnam War shaped the baby boomers. The 1980 eruption of Mount St. Helens is a regional generational event that gives shape to what it means to live with the ever-present threat of natural disaster here in the Pacific Northwest. The 40th anniversary of the eruption of Mount St. Helens doesn't in and of itself hold special significance, but like anniversaries in general, it's a reflective moment, a reminder to stop and consider what matters in our culture and history, in the way that we mark personal events like a birthday or a wedding, or those that hold more broad shaping power like an event of national significance. Our collective memory helps to define what events hold significance for the groups that we belong to. For example, 9/11 fundamentally changed many aspects of life in America, specifically how we travel. Precautions and behaviors that seemed unimaginable before are now commonplace. Removing shoes, belts, and advanced screening technologies are all part of our new normal at the airport. I was working in Queens one year after the attack and can recall the signage urging "if you see something, say something," posted throughout the Long Island Railroad stations, a phrase that carried instant significance and simultaneously became a cultural standard of life in New York City and the surrounding boroughs. The eruption of Mount St. Helens holds varied significance for Pacific Northwesterners. Like in all disasters, it depends on your proximity to the event. It's important to note that there's no absolute scale for measuring human pain and suffering. Pain is either present or not. And the pain was real for those affected by both the immediate destructive impacts, the loss of life, homes, and livelihoods, as well as those who experience the eruption from a distance. Perhaps with a mixture of fascination and fear for the unknown, people asking, how will this impact me? The 1980 eruption of Mount St. Helens contributed greatly to the development of emergency response and coordination here in Washington. The eruption made it clear how interconnected we are and the vulnerabilities we share as Washington communities. Ash and mud flowing from Mount St. Helens clogged portions of the Lewis and Columbia rivers, carrying dire consequences for both salmon and port traffic. Today, regional response planning for future eruptions coordinates from both the public and private sectors to meet the broad recovery needs specific to distinct groups and communities. Washington's present emergency planning even recognizes the threats posed by natural disaster to our state's cultural resources. The ability to decode particular patterns of seismic activity learned from Mount St. Helens saved thousands of lives during the 1991 eruption of Mount Pinatubo in the Philippines. Likewise, new technologies developed for monitoring Pacific Northwest volcanoes, like the United States Geological Survey's mobile monitoring stations, or smart spiders, have made it both safer for scientists and emergency responders working in the field. Perspectives on the eruption also differ based on how old you were. One memory we received recently via the MAC's website for collecting memories, mshcriticalmemory.org, brought to light a frustrated toddler's memories. Eric Kolarski of Spokane Valley didn't understand why Mom and Dad got to go outside and play, shovel, in the warm snow, and why he wasn't allowed to go outside too. Stephen Everts wrote to say he remembers playing outside in the gray snow and going to Sears to buy masks. Important points of view that give us small insights into how a child makes sense of events by drawing an analogy between the fallen ash and something more familiar like snow. I hope you'll take the opportunity to share your Mount St. Helens story with the MAC by visiting our website at mshcriticalmemory.org. Your contribution and perspective on the eruption's 40th anniversary will become an important resource for revisiting the event decades down the road, as memories of the eruption of Mount St. Helens are all just a part of the past.